Welcome to the Momnesia podcast, a podcast for moms where we share the stories we want to remember and the ones we wish we could forget. We're your hosts, Julie Short and Sarah McLaughlin.
Before we start this week's episode, we would love to hear from you. If you could hop over to our Facebook page, pinned at the very top is a survey. If you could answer a few questions from us, we would love to get some feedback. Also, if you haven't seen them yet, we finally have t-shirts. We've got a cool tank and a tee. We'd love for you to check those out and sport some Momnesia swag. Hop onto our social media channels to learn more. Julie.
Hey, Sarah. Sarah. You know, most people sing, Julie, 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 do you love me?
What is that?
Julie, Julie, do you care? I don't know. It's a Julie song from back in the day.
Look it up.
Yeah. How's it going, girl?
It's going. I want to talk about podcasts. Can we do that?
Well, you know, we can, you know it.
You know it. All things podcast.
Exactly.
For our catch up.
Okay. We've got lots of them.
Yeah, because you turned me on to some.
I turn you on. Thank you.
To the podcast. And because I've been in the car more or traveling more, I feel like I've had a little bit more time to sneak them in.
Okay. So which ones are we going to talk about?
Well, we have to talk about Dolly Parton's America.
Oh, it's so good. Guys, if you are not listening to Dolly Parton's America, well, don't stop this podcast. When you're done with this podcast, go to Dolly Parton's America.
I was telling a friend, if you care about songwriting, which not everybody cares about songwriting, but he happens to be a songwriter, then it's a must. If you care about women's rights, it's a must. If you care about wondering the divide of politics, anything
where we
spiritual,
are in culture,
where you came from, being a human, basically anything, listen to this podcast.
I know. It is amazing how they're able. I mean, I'm not like a huge Dolly Parton fan. Mm-hmm. I love Jolene as much as the next person does. But I'm not like I make an annual
all
pilgrimage
albums,
to Dollywood. But when this came out, I do love Jad Appenrod. And so anything he produces, I'm like, okay, I want to listen to this. And the very first one, I was like, oh my gosh, I am hooked. And I was texting everybody. I'm like, oh my gosh, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you took me up on that.
Yes,
because
I did.
It's so good.
And my friend Sarah Martin, the same day that you told me about it, said, I really think you would like this. And she doesn't always tell me about podcasts. I mean, it's like if she does tell me about one, I'm like, okay, well, that one must have really stood out.
Right.
So yeah, basically this is, just to give the premise without spoiling anything, this is one that when Dolly Parton was in a car accident, maybe 10 years ago or so, she met a surgeon in a hospital in Tennessee, and they, believe it or not, became these fast friend, kindred spirits. And it is the son, Jad is the son of the surgeon, who goes on to host this podcast, interview her, give backstory. Of course, for me, Jad and his family are Lebanese. Mm-hmm. I'm Lebanese. So when they do ties about the tie of Middle Eastern music and Appalachian music, and even hosting a podcast as a storyteller, he's amazing,
he is.
As you know, and the content and the way it's done is really interesting. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that also.
And I never would have known that Dolly had such widespread appeal amongst all different walks of life, you know, and how he kind of paints that picture. I'm like, oh yeah, she does. Like, it's like, oh yeah, of course. But I never stopped to think about that before.
Yeah.
And the stories that he shares, you know, about how she has been able to, I don't even want to say reinvent herself because it's been pretty consistent, but her songwriting goes through this evolution of kind of where she's at in that decade in life and what she's going through and what the time of, you know, the zeitgeist of the day is.
Yes.
And it's just fascinating.
It's really fascinating. I mean, I dare say it's like a prophetic voice. She definitely in each season, each album has a pulse on what is shifting in America. So it's really interesting. Okay. And you turned me on to Passenger List.
Yes.
And I'm like, where the heck are you people? I was like on
Come
it,
on
getting one
Passenger
every
List.
week.
You have us hooked. Now, give us more episodes.
If you're on a weekly thing, then don't come and surprise me and disappear.
For those of you who have not listened to Passenger List yet, this is a fictional podcast, similar to Blackout or what was that one we loved?
I haven't heard Blackout.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Okay, do
Homecoming.
Blackout. Homecoming.
Yes.
Yes. So kind of this narrative storytelling that's fictional, and it's about a plane that disappears. Now it has, very similar elements of that. I think it was like an ABC show of
oh yeah.
what was the name of that?
Flight no wait. It wasn't Homecoming, but it had a one Manifest.
Yes.
Okay.
So it has very similar elements to the ABC show Manifest. Colin and I watched that. We like that, but it's different. It's not the same storyline, but similar elements. It's really good storytelling in that each episode kind of stands alone, but it's this woman who is trying to track down what happened to this flight, because you find out early on her brother was on that flight and he passed away or is missing. And so each episode kind of explores a possibility of what has happened. And it's just really good.
It's really good. Yeah. So come back, Passenger List.
We want to hear more.
Yes. Okay.
I was totally shocked to hear you haven't listened to S-Town yet.
No.
What is wrong with you?
I'm sure you told me about this back in the day when I started on the pods.
I'm sure it was on my original list.
Yeah. A bunch of girlfriends last weekend brought it up and they were like, what? You haven't heard this? So I just finished it, blew through that.
I can tell right now that you feel the same way I do. It is not I don't love it as much as some people do.
Yes.
But I still think it is high up there.
Yeah.
And, it was post-Serial. It was like their follow-up podcast. And I always love Serial and how they tell stories. I just didn't think the story was as compelling as some other podcasts that I listened to.
It's almost like reading Catcher in the Rye. Like in that you sit with that book of your own self-actualization long after. And so part of the epic nature of the book is someone coming to terms with their life and you kind of entering that headspace. And I feel like with S-Town, it's less about a crime and the story and what happened next and more about you think it's about that. And that's the premise. So I don't want to spoil anything again, but it gets more about the characters and this one central character. And that leaves you having that kind of like existential questioning. So
kind of wrestling with it.
Yeah, it took me to a different place than I first thought it would. And, I'm a 4. I'm already doing that. I just want a story. Like finish the podcast, tell me who done it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely not that type, but I know it is really popular amongst podcast listeners.
Yeah. Momnesia, have you heard of that?
It's like my favorite podcast.
I want to know, I can't remember if we've talked about this on the podcast before. Dear John. Have we talked about this?
I don't know if you mean Dirty John?
I mean, Dirty John.
Yes, Dirty John.
Okay.
No, I don't know if we've talked about it, but holy cow.
Now, have you watched it?
I have not watched it,
Okay, because I don't know why I suddenly get this email. I don't remember getting it before, but I get a Netflix newsletter. What's coming out? And I was like, ooh, I wish I had time to watch TV. I want to mark my calendar with all these things. Well, I saw that Dirty John was coming out. It's already been out. And I watched it like online I think on YouTube, like from Bravo or something.
Okay.
It was very good, but it's now on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can watch it. And very rarely do I think like the movie was better than the book or the show was better than the podcast. But in this case, I would argue that the show is better because the premise is this man who kind of this psychopathic male who preys on women,
Rich women.
And so in the show, Eric Bana, who is hot and who's known and who looks endearing but is devilish, is the guy.
Okay.
And Connie Britton, do you know who that is? Like Friday Night Lights in Nashville. Okay. She's the woman. But because there's money and it's like on the coast and she's a designer, and so the clothes are cool, the houses are cool. It's really great. And it has one of the leads is Ruth Langmore from Ozark.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Totally different
Hey,
character.
Ruth.
So
Yeah, love her.
love the Langmores.
Yes.
Wish them well. God bless them. So those that are left.
Yes.
Anyways, I really love that one. That's an older one, but
Did
I'm
you
kinda looking
listen
through.
to Dr. Death?
Oh yeah.
Ooh, I love all the Wondery podcasts. So
Are
good.
those both Wondery?
Yeah. uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
I think you told me about that. Okay, so I was at Hey Katrina Canfield. I was at her birthday party up in Anderson, and that's the first night I listened to Dr. Death on my drive home.
Okay.
I got from probably through to about Lapel. So that's halfway between Anderson and Noblesville. So those of you that aren't from here, you know, I'm about 20 minutes into the drive. I'm listening to this first episode. I had to turn on the lights, look through my car, and
For Dr. Death?
well, it was more like
He's a surgeon. Did you think he was going to hide in your car?
scalpel. What? No, it was like the whole feeling, the darkness. It was just, I was like, oh my word. And I got home and I was like in a weird mood. And Jeff's like, you know, they're like happy podcasts too, right?
Where? I don't know them. Okay.
But
So
I couldn't stop listening.
Yeah.
I went ahead and finished it
hooked.
during the daytime.
So, okay, another one similar to Dr. Death that I just listened to is Bad Batch, which
Okay, I
may
see that popping up. I've not heard
also
it.
be Wondery. I don't know, but it was equally as good and makes you totally question the medical establishment. Yeah, it is Wondery. Like, how is this happening?
Right.
How are these people allowed to practice medicine?
Right. Okay, so totally different genre. If you're like, what? What? Why are they listening to that?
Who are these people?
I would also like to say when I'm not in the mood for like, you know, bone tingling, chill on my spine kind of thing, nail biters, I always go to Dax.
Oh, I
Armchair
love
expert.
Armchair expert.
And the guests, you know, I mean, he's a great interviewer, but like some of the guests, it's just all over who's on there, and it's pretty eye-opening, and I love that.
Did you listen to one of the most recent ones with Kate and Oliver Hudson?
No, I saw that they were on there.
Because they are starting a new podcast.
I saw that.
Called Sibling Rivalry.
Yes.
And they are interviewing other siblings.
Okay.
Do you think we could pass as siblings?
I don't know.
Sister-in-laws once
Maybe,
removed?
yeah.
We should try and get on there.
Yeah, they're totally copying us.
Okay, one more and then we should probably stop. People may be getting annoyed with us, but sorry.
It's our podcast.
It's our podcast. Slow burn. So in the past, they have done the Nixon impeachment and then the Clinton scandal impeachment. This is totally not on that line, but I am loving it. It is Tupac and Notorious B.I.G.
Okay.
And I am totally loving it.
Okay.
So
I'll
listen to
check
that one
that
too.
out.
It's by Slate.
Okay. So now people ask me if I mention podcasts. They'll be like, when do you have time? Or when? I wish I could listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your answer?
People who say that, I'm like, how can you not listen to podcasts? I am always listening to it. So I listen to it on my commute. I've got 30 minutes each way.
Right.
And then when
That
I'm coming
knocks a lot
here,
out.
I've got, 40-minute drive. I listen to it while I'm working out. So while I'm walking or jogging or lifting, I listen to it. Now, luckily, I have an office where I have a closed door or I'm by myself. It's not like I'm in a cube. So while I'm working, I'm listening to it as if it, we're on Spotify. So it's just like background noise.
And you can have those two things going?
Yeah. I mean, not for all things.
Right.
Like there are some things I gotta...
Not while I'm on the phone. Jeez.
I gotta really buckle down and pay attention. But to me, it's just kind of like the background.
Yeah.
And I'm like I said, as if I were listening to music.
Right.
And then last but not least, when I'm at home, like cleaning or gardening or whatever. But I basically podcasts have replaced music in my life. I'm just always listening to podcasts.
Okay.
What about you?
I tend to, I have AirPods, which I love.
Me too.
And
I actually bought them for Colin for his birthday. And I stole them.
And you stole them?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, what's yours is his. What's his is yours.
We are one.
Yes. So a lot of times if I'm home in the day and the kids are there, they'll be doing their thing and I just kind of have them in while I'm doing stuff, doing dishes.
Yeah.
Whatever. And I also like to listen to mine on like 1.5 speed, depending on what it is. So I can kind of work through them. I meant to tell you, I listened to some when I drove to Nashville a couple of weekends ago. And then on the way home, instead of listening to that, I took you up on your recommendation and listened to all 3 John Mulaney.
Oh, did you love
Netflix specials? Yes, I loved them.
Oh my gosh.
I'm glad you recommended it because I had started it. I think I told you this before. And I was like, I don't know. Cause he was new to me and I gravitate to the people I've seen before, but you recommended it. I was like, I need to listen. I loved it. And so I went on to the other 2.
Did you have to pull over on the side of the road like I did?
I didn't because I really needed to get home, but I was laughing. I mean, I was really laughing hysterically.
Good. I hope you peed your pants.
I may or may not. I was in Jeff's car, so I'm not telling.
Oh. Okay. Any others that we need to cover?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many, but
yeah. Well,
those are my favorites lately.
Yeah. If you need some recommendations, let us know. We got them all.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's probably enough about podcasts, but you know what? Podcasts are magic. They bring people together, Sarah.
Yeah, they do.
They do. And you know what? They brought us our next guest because Shannon was a listener and that's how I got connected with her on Facebook.
Yes.
We are so honored to have her here with us. So let's go get Shannon.
Get her. Shannon, we're really happy to have you on the show today.
I'm really excited to be here with you too.
I had to go back and I have to let everybody know that we have a little bit of history and it's a little bit comical to me. We went on a Tri-S trip, which for you AU people, you'll know that was the study abroad experience that they had at Anderson. It was a great program. We've probably talked about it even a little bit on other pods, but we went. It was 1999, and I know because everyone was up in arms worried about Y2K.
Yeah.
And we were going to be in Saltillo, Mexico.
Right.
And do you remember we were sitting on that wall?
Like the pool wall or something.
Yeah, the pool wall.
Yes.
Out back at this kind of church campus that we were at. And I want to say that's where the Armagums, didn't they get engaged or pre-engaged that night or something? But hi, Armagums, if you listen. Yes. But I remember even being nervous because everybody thought, was the world going to end or would our food sources deplete because of glitches in the ones and zeros? And there we were drinking like the good Coke with the sugar cane on that wall.
In the glass bottles.
And we were also talking, Jeff and I just talked about the other day how we, on that trip had that bunny. Do you remember that? We made all these videos with like an Energizer bunny.
I had not thought about that in years. It
was really weird because we were pretty much adults. I'm like, why didn't we do normal college things like look for weed or something? We were playing with this stuffed animal.
That's because you were good Christian girls.
That's exactly. I know.
Come on.
Anyways, it was fun to kind of reminisce that we were both there. But
did they make you bring like 2-gallon jugs of water with you in case there was like this catastrophe?
I don't know, but I wasn't in charge. It was the old and in charge 20-year-olds leading our trip. We drove down there. I mean, it was like
days of
edgy.
driving.
Yeah.
I went to Heather Nalbone's house. Do you remember Heather Nalbone?
I remember Heather. Where was her house?
She was living in Charleston, South Carolina, and there was like 20 of us that went down there.
Oh my goodness.
And her parents are amazing. And they're like, just come down, and all we ask is that each of you bring 2-gallon jugs of water in case something were to happen and we would all be stuck here and we would need water. And so we came down. They paid for all of our food and everything.
Oh my goodness.
But we had our jugs of water.
Wait, was it Y2K?
Yeah.
Oh, that was why. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
1999. Girl.
1999. Party like it's 1999.
I went on a Trieste trip. Well, of course, they're all over New Year's. I went to Greece.
Oh, Greece.
I guess maybe it was 98.
Okay.
And going into 99. Yeah.
And it was New Year's.
So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Fun times.
Well,
Anyway.
okay. So anyways.
That's why we're here.
And it was also the season. I can remember you dancing because it was what was the song? A little bit of Monica.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And we had a dance for it.
Yeah. Wild Side. And now you're a pastor. Just
I still dance though.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad to have you back and kind of have a little bit of a full circle moment that we're reconnecting in a new stage of life. You're one of those people that when I see pop up, it's just through Facebook now, I'm like, she has something to say. Like you have, what would be the words? I don't know. I find a lot of value when you do talk. I'm listening. So we're
kind of like a prophetic voice.
Yeah, I do feel that. Yeah. And so we're really looking forward to this and appreciate you coming down to do it. I want to kind of start and just ask you to give us your mom stats and your professional stats. You know how this works. So tell us a little bit about all that.
Okay. Mom stats. Here's what I'll say about my age, because one of my girlfriends said it this way. I am at level 39 and I'm going to level up to 40.
Yeah, girl.
40 is where it's at.
She said, use levels and then we're cool. Right. So,
yes.
So I'm a fairly older mom to have really young kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the 5-year-old, his name is Judah. He's this amazing, sweet, compassionate, thoughtful, introverted little guy. Looks just like my husband.
Oh, really? Okay.
Aww.
And so, of course, when I got pregnant the second time, I figured I'd have 3 that looked exactly alike living in the house. But Isaiah, my second, is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, looks like me when I was a little kid. And he's also got all of those characteristics that I worry about in myself, which is that he's super passionate.
Okay.
He's the instigator. Like he will jump on his big brother and big brother will be like, oh my gosh, he's beating me up. And I'm
Right.
okay, like he's your younger brother, just move. Like you're bigger than him.
Right.
But he's this passionate, intense little guy, and they're just so different. And I think that's something that totally shocked me as a parent, was how different they could be. And I think all parents are like, yes, we understand this, but like before you're a parent, you feel like, okay, my kids are going to be the same. But
Yeah.
they're just so different. And I love them both. Judah, my older one, loves like pop music and he's like dancing and fun and those kind of things. Isaiah likes like metal hair band music. And they're just, I love these boys. And
that's awesome.
Just both so unique.
And it can be tricky trying to figure out how to parent 2 completely different personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had to basically relearn. Like I thought I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And then the second one comes along and I'm like, no, nothing is the same. Nothing is the same.
Right.
How you put them to bed, how you love them, how you correct them.
Yeah.
Nothing is the same. So yeah, it's
for sure.
It's all brand new.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Brett. Your honey.
Yes, my honey. Brett is this amazing man that I met in seminary. We've been married for 14 years, which it's really hard to fathom that I've been married that long. But he is in the bowling world, which is really kind of fun and unique.
I was totally fascinated when I heard
I know.
that.
Julie said that and I was like,
met
what?
A professional bowler before.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a man who has the same degrees I have, undergrad, and he has a master's of divinity, but he moved into the bowling world and that is his ministry and he does it well. I mean, they call him Padre and but he does product development. He does staff managing for a company called Motive Bowling.
Okay.
And yeah, that's his world. He travels, with a PBA tour.
Wow. Now, does he also bowl? I mean, is that a no-brainer?
Does.
Okay.
He does. He is a professional bowler. Like he's got his, professional bowling, but he's kind of stepped back from that. With the kids being little, he doesn't have the time because you have to practice your art or your skill, or, you're a musician, that.
Yeah.
And so he stepped back from that a little bit, but yeah, he also does bowl.
Okay.
Did you guys go on lots of dates to Cooper's bowling alley?
No, actually, he worked there when we met.
Okay.
So, no dates to there, but, and I am not a good bowler.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if this is even appropriate to say, but I'm going to say it.
Say it.
This is what I always say. People are like, so you must be a good bowler. And I'm like, no, bowling is not a sexually transmitted disease.
Right.
So, no, I am not a good bowler.
Did he wear
That's funny.
bowling shoes in your wedding?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm much too controlling for that.
Oh, okay, good. I
And-
like other controlling
And one more
people.
bowling question. Did he like grow up doing that, or when did he come onto this skill?
Yeah, I think he bowled with his parents or his dad growing up, but he wasn't professional until nearish when we met.
Okay.
Did he do bowling class at AU in the clearing?
That's right. Oh my gosh.
He did actually, but he did it as a blow-off class because he was good at it already.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, he did.
Well,
That's why I
took
took
it as a blow.
astrophysics.
I took bowling as a blow-off class, but it happened to be during the semester that I went into a depression, and it was at 8:00 in the morning, and I would never get out of bed.
Right.
And so I was getting a D in bowling.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
dropped it.
The sound of those
I know.
pins in that little bowling alley at 8 in the morning.
Dr. Scott.
That would be horrible.
Remember how many people how we used to feel like, oh, I have these early classes at 8 and 9. How 8 and 9 would feel so early.
So early. And
Ugh,
Hebrew at
we were
8
so annoying.
Oh, Hebrew at 8.
That is rough.
That's rough. Yeah.
That is rough. Was that with Yep. Dr. Shively?
No, he's Greek. I did. It was Dr. Ross.
Dr. Ross.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good times.
Yeah.
Good times. Go Ravens.
So
Yeah.
So my husband is in the bowling industry, and I
Okay.
am a pastor as a woman. So when people meet
Yes.
us, they're always like, no. Like they're very skeptical that is actually our profession, right? What we do.
That's funny. Yeah. So he's a man of the bowling cloth. You're a woman of the cloth. Tell us
Yes.
about your professional life.
Well, I have basically been in ministry my whole adult life. I went to undergrad as a mathematics major.
Oh, wow.
At AU.
Yeah.
But the running from God situation, that whole thing, it didn't last as long as some people's running from God lasted.
Okay.
And so I changed to Bible and religion. I was a youth pastor and then went back to seminary. That's where I met Brett. So even though he's not in ministry, I'm super glad that he has, had the foresight or whatever it is to go to seminary and get his degree there. That's where we met. Even though we were in undergrad together, we never met. Which at AU,
Right.
how is that?
Yeah, small
possible?
pond.
But I'm older than him, so
Wow.
You
I'm
cougar.
the
Hey
cougar.
there.
Yeah, I'm 2 years older than him, so.
Nice.
So when I graduated from seminary, I, got a lot of those delightful rejection letters from churches that implied but did not say that they didn't want me because I was a female. But then
God bless him.
Yeah, I
Yes,
was going to
that's
ask
right.
about that.
at the time it was devastating. Now I'm sort of whatever.
Right.
It
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, that's on them.
Yeah. So
And for those of you who do not know, I have no idea what religious background our listeners come from, but Shannon and I have grown up in the Church of God, which was a movement that has had women as leaders throughout the history of the movement.
Yeah.
And even with that, it is not always a welcoming place to women.
yeah.
So it is really discouraging. And I know that it takes some strong women to be able to put up with that kind of rejection, as well as that kind of criticism and close eye. And you have to be 10 times better than your male counterparts.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, even now with my experience, 10 years as a senior pastor, if Brett tried to get a senior pastorate with his degree, he could probably get one quicker than I could, which is I don't even know what to say to that.
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
To say the least.
It's growing, but there is room for growth for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely growing. I mean, in the last 2 years, we've got Erin Taylor Moss and Emily Clark and Joy Sherman, who are all now lead pastors in the Midwest. And so there's definitely growth in that. Mary Stevens, I mean, just hopeful.
Yes. And the dean of our seminary is a woman.
That's right.
Marian Hawkins.
That's right. Yeah.
Our friend Kimberly, who is on here, has a online course, an online community called Preacher Girl School for women who want to explore that calling, but maybe can't get to seminary full time because of where they're at in their stage in life. So lots of things that we're doing to try and promote to get women prepared and out there ready to serve.
Yeah. So you've done that your whole adult career, you said.
Yeah.
And what does that look like right now?
What it looks like right now is, I guess I kind of ended my story with the end of seminary, but I went right into a senior pastorate and was there for almost a decade. And like really great times, some really hard times, just ministry. Like it was actually, they were very receptive to me as a woman, which was fantastic because I didn't have to fight that fight.
Yeah.
There's already so many things in ministry that are challenging.
Yes.
And so that was lovely to not have to deal with that for a while. And so I was there until March of last year, 2018, resigned from there and have been given the way that I'll say it is I've been given the gift of time to reassess where and what God wants me to be doing. I am confident that I'm called to be in some kind of ministry. What that looks like, I'm pretty open to. So I'm just waiting for God to kind of give me direction. And in the meantime, I'm trying to become as healthy as I can be for the ministry that I'll be in. So emotional health, spiritual health. I've, taken on some physical health challenges. I ran the Indy Mini in May.
Okay.
Which,
congratulations.
I mean, if you had asked me 2 years ago, will you ever run over a block? I would have said no, unless someone is chasing me, I will not be running. And I ran 13.1 miles.
That's amazing.
Girl.
Yeah. So I've taken this time to just do some things that are for me, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Because in ministry, it's a very difficult
there's not a lot of me
challenge. Right. Right. And as a mom of young kids.
Yeah.
Also.
I also ran a mini at one point, and it was starting from not being able to run at all.
Yeah.
And this was out when I lived in Arizona, and I could not run a block. And one of the things that I would do when I was running to like try and motivate myself to like keep going when I wanted to stop, I didn't have kids at this time. This was like way before kids, but I would say, okay, imagine that someone is getting ready to kidnap your children and you have to get to them. You cannot stop, Julie. You cannot stop. But I was just out of shape and I stopped. So
it didn't work?
No, my
bummer.
poor children, they were kidnapped.
But you weren't a mom. How could you know?
Right. I was trying to like muster that feeling, that instinct. I thought surely I could summon this, but yeah, I didn't.
Maybe if I said that to you now, you would run.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's try it afterwards. We'll go out in the parking lot, do some sprints.
And those heels?
Yeah.
You think?
I could totally do it. I'm going to save my kids.
I thought you were always a runner.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
But
Carol, I have trained to become this runner. No, I'm not a runner. No.
Okay.
No.
I was even thinking, so since we're talking about it, I also ran the mini.
Hey.
I was thinking you were in that group, but it must have been Amy and Kirsten.
Amy and Kirsten run stuff together.
Okay.
They did it in Chicago. Did you do it in Chicago?
No, I did the Indy Mini.
Okay.
With Jeff. I've done it twice. It's been a long time ago. So I don't know. Maybe we should talk about that.
Let's do a Momnesia.
Oh my goodness. We can make shirts.
Totally.
Oh my gosh.
We're doing it.
Okay.
Doing it. All right, everybody
I'll check
start
the
training.
dates.
Start training right now.
It's the first weekend of May usually.
Okay.
She's pretending like she's
No,
gonna
actually, I would totally be in for that.
Oh my gosh.
You can do it. You can do.
Didn't we want to tell some stories?
Okay. Okay. Well, you guys inspired me.
Okay. Mini
Speaking of
marathon
inspiration.
2020. Here we go.
Okay.
Let's tell some stories,
Let's
Shannon.
do it.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us the one you want to remember or the one you want to forget?
Let's start with what I'd like to forget.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what I want to forget right up front, and then I'll kind of share a little bit about it. And the reason I want to talk about this is because the few times that I have shared kind of my regret or my thing that I'd like to forget, I've never articulated it that way, but as a mom to other people, so many people say, "Oh my gosh, me too." And that's such a powerful, as you guys know, that's such a powerful phrase and such a powerful connector for everybody, but especially for mothers and for being a parent. So what I would really like to forget, and I hope I can do this without, emotion is one of my things. And so like, I'm very connected to that. So I hope I can get through this and not just be like bawling the whole time. But one of the things that I would really love to forget in my momhood
That's good.
is the parent that I was in the midst of postpartum depression. And just like off the top of my head, just things like my anger and when I was present and the lack of presence in so much of it. I would really love to not have that hanging over me as a mom because it has brought up so much mom shame and guilt and all these things that people say you can't have that, you can't do that, you can't live within that, but we all know that we do, and we carry it with us. So I had a lot of trouble getting pregnant, and we tried for a lot of years. We were married 9 years before we had any kids.
Okay.
Which was great. I mean, it was lovely as a couple, but like it was that like, what is wrong with us and you know, what's going on? So we did all that. Like, okay, is it you? Is it me? And I had an appointment to go to the doctor to get some testing done and found out I was pregnant. So that appointment, I had already scheduled it. That appointment became an "Are you pregnant?" appointment, and I was 6 weeks pregnant. So we had tried and tried and tried and had all this heartbreak and had these conversations about, are we even going to be parents? Do we, you know, like, will we adopt? What will we do? And I got pregnant, and I was immediately terribly sick, which they're like, oh, that's a good thing. You want to be really sick because, you know, that means
Love it.
Hormones
whatever.
and all that. Yeah.
So I did not have those beautiful, lovely pregnancies where you're glowing and wearing heels. I had the like laying on the couch, like eating an entire watermelon, you know, like that kind of pregnancy. But I was so excited to become a mom, but hormones are just insane.
They are.
And I remember going to the hospital, and I was so excited, and I had Judah, and I had him vaginally. Vaginally. And it was like a 22-hour labor. So like, oh my gosh, like get out of me, kid.
Yeah.
But the first thing that I was aware of was that I didn't want to even see him. And I wasn't joyful and excited, and I was crying, but it wasn't the normal mom crying of like, I've had this baby. And I remember immediately feeling like, what is wrong with me? Here I've wanted this child for so long. We've wanted to have children and get pregnant, and I don't even want this baby. And I would nurse him and send him back to the nursery. And the nurses were like, do you want him to stay in the room? And I'd be like, no. And like, what is wrong with me as a mother that was how I felt about him. And I, you know, they give you that, like, I don't know if they do this for everybody. They gave me a questionnaire before I left.
Sure.
And the woman was like, we can't let you leave because you failed this test, essentially. Like, and so they sent in a psychologist. And
Is it Just to clarify, you're talking about the one that's like, are you prone to postpartum depression or
Yes.
anxiety? Yeah.
It was a written
Yeah.
kind of test. And I don't know what you mean by I failed it, but
Right.
apparently like they
strong
couldn't
words.
let me leave the hospital.
Right.
So
There's some red flags.
There are yes. So I stayed for a few more days. And it just continued to get worse. Like it was this like slowly creeping darkness that kind of continued to come over me. And I had asked for 8 weeks maternity leave from the church, and they were very gracious to give that to me. And when I had to go back to work, as it came up, I just sobbed and sobbed. And so that it continued to get worse then. I went back to work, and I was basically faking all of life. Like, here I am, a pastor, so I'm supposed to be this like joyful, like God bringing presence in the pulpit. And I am sure that my sermons were rough at that time. I haven't gone back to listen to them. But like, I thought I was hiding it from everybody, and there's no way. I mean, there's just no way. And it just continued to get deeper and darker.
When you were in the hospital and they had said, okay, we need to keep you here a little bit longer, were your doctors working with you to kind of look at those hormone levels? Were they trying to figure out, is there something going on? Obviously psychologically, but also something biologically that was just out of balance, or what were they doing when they kept you there? Were they just hoping, oh, she just needs a little bit more time and it's going to get better? Or was that not very clear?
I honestly don't remember. There's a lot about that season that is gone.
Yeah.
And so I honestly am not sure. And it was the nurses. You know, the nurses are phenomenal in the maternity ward. At least they were in mine.
Yeah.
And it was one of the nurses that was like, honey,
Right.
maternal nurse. And she was like, honey, we are worried about you. And but I don't know how to answer that because I honestly am not sure.
That's all right. And we just had another guest on not too long ago, Jen Petro.
I was thinking about that.
And she talked about that same thing when their family was going through a rough time, that she honestly just had no memories of it. And her kids will say something and she's like, I just don't remember. So I think that's definitely a byproduct of that trauma and that depression that seems to be common.
Yeah. And like to piggyback off of that, when I had Isaiah, so Isaiah's 2.5 years younger than Judah, my hormones changed drastically in that pregnancy. And for the first time since I'd had Judah, I had the ability to have like some joy and some, and I like, as Isaiah made little, like steps and those little
like developmental
I would say to Brett, I don't remember Judah ever doing this. And this amazing sweet man would very like kindly and gently say, he did this,
right?
Just you weren't there. I was in bed, or I was not present. And that in itself brought back all this like guilt and shame about the lack of mom that I was for Judah when he was his first 2 years. And it just was all consuming. I felt like a terrible pastor. I felt like a terrible mother. I felt like a terrible spouse. I was unpleasant and angry, and I didn't have patience. I didn't have joy, like in the things that I should have joy in, like when your little kid is making all these cool milestones. And little kids are, I mean, they're hard. Don't get me wrong, but there's so much fun in having little kids and all the little things I did. And with Judah, I didn't have those. And even still, like, I mean, I'm trying to be graceful with myself, and I've been working on that a lot. But even still, I think I missed this with him. And I just would love to not remember that part of mom. it seems like people are totally okay with the fact that your body changes when you have a kid, and they'll give some forgiveness for the lumpy, bumpy, like being a mom situation. But then why don't we expect that also maybe our brains are going to change? And that's not only normal, it's okay. And there are things that we can do to help with that. Like there are things that we do physically to get past the trauma of birthing a child.
Right.
But then there's all this mental trauma that we expect women to just get over and deal with. And so I hid it because of that shame and because of the expectation that I would be a good mother and, a good pastor and all of that. At the same time, I hid it for a long time. I tried to hide it. I guess that's probably a better way to say it. Because I'm sure that it was pretty obvious.
Sure.
And yeah, I hope that as he grows, Judah will remember me now as a mom and not the angry, sad, distant person that I was his first couple years.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's completely gone. I mean, I am on antidepressants.
Right.
See a counselor, but all of that is to prevent that stuff from
Right. Thank God for all those things.
Gosh, yes. And like you said, thank God for all that stuff. The church is like, I can't tell you how many times I heard from people like, well, I'll pray for you. And if you're praying hard enough, God can take care of this. And I always want to be like, that's so damaging because God could absolutely take care of it. But God has also given human beings the intelligence to create medicines that can fix a physical problem. It's not a spiritual problem. It's an actual physical problem in my brain and in other women's brains. And so, yes, I take the medicine. I see the counselor. And the running is part of that too. I mean, it's part of the health, when you're physically healthy, you're mentally healthy.
He could send a helicopter or a ladder, and the helicopter may be the healing and the ladder may be the meds, but they both get you where you need to go. So they're both gifts.
Right.
It's interesting you used the word, you said you failed the test. And I don't know if they used that word or if that's the word you used, but that language of I'm supposed to have joy in this season, or, we're going to keep you because you failed the test. It's interesting because wherever that language comes from, I think we're kind of conditioned to feel that this season should be one of joy, or we should pass with yes to all these questions. Yes, I'm fine. Yes, I have joy. Yes, I'm feeling no anxiety. Yes, I can sleep, whatever it is when you're in the hospital that they're assessing. And yet those really aren't pass-fail questions. They're representations of what is
your current state.
Yeah. And the failing might be, I put the test in the trash or something. It's not that those feelings. I also had the thought, because as someone who's also struggled with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, I can remember people saying, when you talk about the expectations, I can remember people saying, well, we didn't have that when I was, people a generation in front of me, or, oh, we just called it the baby blues or something.
Yeah. Y'all had it. Yeah. It just wasn't.
It's like saying
correctly identified
sexual abuse or whatever the thing is, or seat belts. Well, we didn't have those. It doesn't mean it didn't exist or it was the best way of dealing. And there was a whole women's movement in the 60s to prove that for generations, things went unnoticed or So
absolutely.
But those kinds of things I also found, at least for me, when you talk about the expectation, was that I'd have it together and I'd be nurturing and I'd be the presence of God, or I don't know if there was another phrase that you used. I was going to jot it down, but that there was anger because of what should have been. I found it really invalidating at times, thinking that their impression was because we didn't talk about it before, that it didn't exist, as if the millennials or the Gen Xers or whatever just
We just
made it up.
this up. Yeah.
Right.
And that, in Dr. Phil's words, sometimes I just wanted to be like, and how did that work for y'all? Because I don't think it did.
No, that's interesting that you say that, because when I started taking medication and started getting help, I kind of, you start to come out. I mean, it takes so long to come out of it. I'm sure I'm not completely out of it yet.
Sure.
But as I started to come out of it, I started to be a little more honest and share kind of where I was and those kind of things. And I started a sermon series called My Story, and just talked about the fact that every one of us has something to share that can connect with somebody that then will connect them to God. And so I had different people in the congregation come up and tell their story and kind of share a scripture that was, solid for them. And that was what I shared, because it was at that time where I was coming out of the depression and I was starting to realize, oh my gosh, look at all this. Look at how I was a parent, look at how I was a pastor, and started to really feel, because in the midst of it, I didn't have the guilt. I just was sad and, and angry. And so as I started to come out from it, I did that sermon series, and that was the part I shared. And I shared my scripture that I used. I think it's Psalm 69, where it says, "Save me, O God, for the waters have come up over my neck."
Yes.
And talked about the importance of lament in our story of salvation, our story of connecting with God, and those kind of things. And I had several women come up to me who were 60 plus in that generation and say, "I think I had that, and I never knew what to call it." Or my husband just told me to get over it, or, so I, like, when you say like that, like, this is not something the millennials made up. Yeah, absolutely. It is something that existed. And now there are tools to deal with it and to help with it. Whereas I don't think there were, and there weren't words for it. And so that you've got these women who, dealt with all of that. And
Suffered in silence.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to get political. I want to get political, but I don't want to get political. That habit that some of us may have to look back and say, well, but we did it that way before. And so why can't we keep doing it? Or it didn't exist then. It's like, if you look at history, there were a lot of problems with ways that we've done things before.
Right.
So that unwillingness to just be thankful that those tools are there is surprising to me, especially in the church.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh.
I want to ask a question. You talked about how it was for like this 2-year journey, where it was really dark.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit about how it was when your second son was, when you were pregnant with him, that some of those hormones started to change. But was there anything that was like the final straw that broke the camel's back that said, I need to get help, I can't keep doing this?
Yeah, actually, the final straw that said I need to get help was my husband. And he said, this is not you. And I mean, he'd kind of nudge. He was so supportive. And so, I mean, he says now, I am the father I am because I was able to develop that in that time. And I am the spouse I am because of that, which is kind of lovely. I mean, he says, I wish you didn't have to deal with that. But he was the one that finally said, I can't do this anymore. You have to get help. And I remember like him crying and me crying. And that's when I'd kind of halfway like tried to get out of it. And that's when I finally like was like, okay, I got to do something, because this is not just killing me. It's not good for my son, and it is harming my marriage. So that was it. That was the thing that really like, and that was before I got pregnant with Isaiah. But it was the straw that made me like move into a healthier phase and a wellness journey.
Yeah. And did you start by going to see your doctor, or did you start by going to see a therapist, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I actually went to this is a funny story in the midst of this. I went to my family practice doctor, who is a dude, and like just terrible bedside manner.
Okay.
And the thing he said, like, I'm explaining where I'm at and crying and whatever, and he goes, "Yeah, let's get you some meds so you can be tolerable." And like, you know what? Like at the time,
Did you punch him?
Right in the nuts.
I wish that I had. No, at the time I just was like, yeah, okay, I need some meds. But but now I'm like, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Right.
But like, so he did get me on what I'm even on now.
Right.
Antidepressants. But I also
So we'll give them that.
so,
But
yeah, but still.
yeah.
But it's been a process of figuring out like how much meds I need.
Right.
Oh,
Going
so
to my
much
counselor.
tweaking. Yeah.
Oh, so much tweaking. And that's the thing, like that I like want people to get from this is, first of all, like, get help. There's so much help out there. Don't be afraid of it. And it's not being ungodly or a bad Christian to get the help, but also just that, like, it takes a process.
Or even if you're not a person of faith, you're not weak
Right.
to ask for help.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, it will save your life and the life and your relationships
Yeah.
to get help.
I mean, that's something I talk with the kids so much now, even in little things. My son, Joseph, I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast the last few weeks, how he's been responding so well to this teacher he has because everything's through the teacher's economic system and they earn money for rewards. And he had begun to not turn some things in and was getting zeros. And finally, after so much prompting, he finally said it's because he didn't want to be fined. He didn't want to lose the bucks to ask for help. So I'm like, well, if you get zeros, I mean, you're going to be repeating the grade. But that lesson of...
But then he can earn more bucks.
I know.
If he's in the grade for the second time.
Oh, yeah, true.
Sorry,
But
I was
that
trying to be
apple
funny.
fritter was amazing.
I know. I'll
No,
shut up
like that concept that asking for help is the only way to grow, and that I ask for help. All of us have to ask for help. I was going to read this because you referenced it, and lament is something we're really... Our guest that we just had on, of course, we haven't released. She was just here before you, was talking about our society being conditioned to want to be happy and to like stuff down the bad feelings, even though those need to come along for the ride. But yeah, the way that it says it in the Message, which is one of the translations in Psalm 69, God, save me. I'm in over my head, quicksand under me, swamp water over me. I'm going down for the third time. I'm hoarse from calling for help, bleary-eyed from searching the sky for God. Now, in your world and in our world, probably for a lot of people of faith, it's not, I wouldn't say those are the Psalms we most often hear,
Right.
the ones of lament, but it's, most of us can identify with that feeling.
Yes.
I'm going to kind of go out on a stream of consciousness. So we'll see if this makes sense. I kind of was thinking about, we had someone named Sarah Westfall on, and she and Christina Smith was also on first season and talked about when there's some sort of trauma or depression or loss or something, how your kids that are living aren't getting the best version of you and dealing with the guilt that you're talking about. Yeah. And she talked a lot about, Sarah talks about feeling like any point of moving forward is only a grace that's given. It wasn't really that she could muster up enough endurance or stamina or faith. It was enough given to her to move forward. Yeah. And in that way, and as someone who struggled with postpartum depression, again, I think for us, there's not only the hope that like, okay, we were given enough grace to move forward, but I have to believe that our children, even at 2 years old or whatever age, it's possible that they were also given enough grace to be left more unscathed. I mean, God
Right.
cares more about that than we do even. So were they given enough grace to be sustained on our lacking? I absolutely believe that's possible.
Yeah. In fact, when you had Christina Smith on, I was so impacted by a phrase that she said, which was, "They don't need a different version of me."
Yes.
And when she said that, her story was just phenomenal. And she talked about the grief that she was living in with her sons. She has a son named Judah too.
Yes, she does.
But she said that phrase, and it has stuck with me in the almost year since her. I mean, like that was last winter, right?
Yeah.
That phrase has been life-giving for me.
That's awesome.
That like my kids are safe and loved, and like I'm not a perfect mom at all, even now. But like they don't need a different version of me.
Yeah.
I'm their mommy, and they love me, and I'm,
It wasn't like the wrong flavor of Oreos went in the wrong grocery bag. Like this was, I believe, in intentional pairing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. God gave me both of these little gifts.
Yeah.
And I don't know if our listeners ever wonder this. We do tend to, it seems to be a common story about loss and grief that we have on this podcast. That is not intentional. We do not invite people because they have a sad story to tell. We don't know what they're going to tell us until they get in here. And to me, that is comforting to know all these moms are sharing a very similar experience, that it's not a programming decision to have these stories. This is just what people are willing to share, and that it's common, that there is connection in these stories, and that you're not alone, that this is a common thing, and to find security and hope and connection in those stories.
Yeah. And just the idea that like, I am not the only one is so powerful. That you can come beside and like hold hands with someone else who has, you've had these women on your podcast, and I've not met but a few of them. But I feel this awesome connection with them because of that, because of the stories, and saying like, we're all just figuring it out.
Right.
We've all gone through hard things.
Yeah. It's just what you said at the beginning of the episode. There's power in the phrase "me too."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share about that particular story or that time frame?
I mean, I guess the thing I would just want to say is like the hardest thing in the midst of that is to get help, and it is the most necessary thing. And I don't know how to motivate somebody towards that, but just to say, you are not alone. There are other people who have gone through this more than you could imagine. And it is so much easier and safer to go through it together, to join together and get help.
Yeah, definitely.
We appreciate you being willing to share that message of hope with everybody. And I know you said you wanted to start on the one you wanted to forget because it might be a little heavier. Is there a story you want to share that's something that you'd like to remember?
Yeah, I've been thinking about like, what do I want to remember? And so I am a documenter.
Okay.
I take pictures. I'm like the one that's always got my camera up taking pictures. And surprisingly, I've not done that in this room yet, but
Yeah.
We can do that soon.
yeah.
Right.
I'm the one that's always like taking pictures and keeping notes about stuff. I have massive amounts of, everybody's like, how do I get rid of my kids' artwork? And I'm the one that's like, I got to keep this. It's so precious, like
Right.
so I document things. And the things that I want to remember about like being a mom and parenthood are those undocumentable things. I know that's not a word, but I'm going to use it anyway because you know what I mean. Those things that happen, like all of a sudden, that are just so much joy. And I'm gonna share two little things,
Okay,
because
cool.
they're kind of short, but they're part of this, like these little amazing things. So the first one I want to share is, so we have just moved back to Indiana. And we had this process of like lots of chaos at the house. And we were kind of worried that the boys, like how the boys were dealing with the stress and the transition. And so Brett was traveling because he travels a lot. And I was packing up the kitchen. So I'm packing. The boys are just kind of playing. Like we had a kind of open floor plan. And so they were playing in the living room. And I was keeping an eye on them while, because, they're boys and because they can get into crazy stuff. So I had to be close by. And they were just playing like kind of together, but by themselves. And Isaiah, who's 2.5, he stopped and he said, Duda, that's what he calls Judah.
Duda.
Duda, you my best friend. And Judah stopped playing. He's 5. And just came over and gave him a big old hug. And then they went back to playing. And I was like, I wish I had like a video of that moment. Like this beautiful, like amazing moment between my boys and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, they fight too and they wrestle and their hugs often turn into wrestles.
Yes.
But they also are these really sweet, like little best friends. And I love those moments. And that's the stuff that like you want to burn into your brain. And you hope that you don't forget. And I always write them down afterwards. I have a journal for each boy, and I write down little stories or like how they pronounced words and stuff, like Duda instead of Judah. Right. So I have one for each of the boys, and of course I wrote that story down because that's just one of my favorites. Yeah. But I have another little story too that I'll tell. All these things happen when Brett's traveling. Not always. I mean, he sees some amazing things too. But so Brett was traveling, and we were getting like putting kids down for bed is always a challenge.
Of course.
And when Brett's traveling, like because I nursed Isaiah. Well, I nursed both of them, but I was still nursing Isaiah, and so Judah didn't want to be in his room by himself, and so he came in to cuddle us while I'm nursing Isaiah. So I'm sitting on the bed, like I usually sat in the rocker, but I was sitting on the bed and like cuddling Judah, nursing Isaiah. And they just start kind of like talking and giggling and whatever. And I say, okay, like we always do at the end of the night, like what was your favorite part of the day? And like what was something that was hard today? And then we pray. And so I said, okay, it's time to pray. So we're going to pray. So Judah prayed a little bit, and his prayers are mostly like thanking God for different types of food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right now, like thank you God for all the cookies in the world or whatever. And I prayed a little bit, and Isaiah had never like joined in, which is fine. He's pretty little. This was probably, he was just 2. So probably back in the spring. And, he said, I want to pray. And I said, okay, that's great. And he goes, God, thank you for mine butt. And thank you for Judah's butt. And thank you for mommy's butt. And then Judah starts like laughing hysterically. And Isaiah's laughing hysterically. And I'm going, I mean, I guess it's good that he's connecting with God. Like, I don't know even what to say about this. But like, it's those little moments that you don't get on camera and that you can't possibly like, know are coming. That are my favorite. I think the favorite things about being a mom. Just how beautiful and unique and amazing these little people are.
Yes. And authentic in the moment. I mean, it just can't be scripted.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you for sharing those moments with us. And I can attest that most of our nighttime prayers are also thank you for lots of things and lots of people. And like you said, lots of
butts are involved.
Thank you for farts. Thank you for all the gross things that boys and young
Yes.
girls.
Young
Mary
girls,
Kate
yeah.
wants to talk about just as many girls.
Oh yeah.
So we got it all. So
Yeah, definitely. I wrote this little picture. I have timeline above it. You said that something Christina said stuck with you and it was freeing. And I always think about a long, long time ago, I read this article. I'm not looking to this guy for all my parenting, answers, but Brad Pitt, there was an article. It was a little while back when Brangelina was together and they talked about the 6 kids and everything. And he said, we raise each other. And it has always stuck with me as this really profound statement. And recently I was talking with Christina about this and about the guilt we sometimes feel when we are not up to our best or whatever version we think we should be. And I was saying, something I've been thinking about is that idea of we raise each other, like physically. Okay, here's why I have the timeline. When you think about the scope of even the time that we can get our mind around, centuries, and there will be centuries beyond, and whether you're a new creation person or whatever, it's like gone on a long time before us, no matter how you slice it. And you think about like, if you and your kid are 30 years apart, like you're basically the same age. I mean, there's really, you basically grew up in the same time, and only really physically am I ahead of my kids. Like I'm caring for them on a physical level, but in the scope of time or spirituality, if that's how you want to look at it, or socially or whatever, like there are a lot of ways where we are raising each other. I mean, it's not all completely on me to be for them what they need. It's also on them to be for me. Now, I don't mean in a way like they have to make certain concessions or take care of me or be my best friend, but like in the sense that like I believe there are certain graces that are going to be given that we all are going to give each other. And when I'm less than or ill or whatever the reason is, I trust that there's a whole system in place that there's going to be ways that they pick up the slack or something's given to them that works out. And because we're really just kind of colleagues in the space of life. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's too weird to think through, but I've definitely been thinking about that a lot lately.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Not that we're saying that they parent us.
Right.
But they do care for us. And there was one time specifically, Matt, Colin, and I all had the flu. It was horrendous. And sweet little Mary Kate was caring for all of us, getting washcloths for us, trading out trash cans, making sure we had things. God bless her. And that's not something that I would have ever thought of or expected to happen prior to that singular experience. But how they care for us, not only in times of sickness, but the love that they give us when we're feeling down, the love, those are all things, like you said, we're raising each other, we're caring for each other. And we definitely probably carry the heavy load of that on maybe the front end when they're really young, but even then they can extend that love back to us.
Right.
But it continues to just meld together as they continue to grow.
Yeah. And you wouldn't expect it. And it's not even necessary, but there's a lesson for us and for them in receiving it.
Yeah.
There's a lesson that it is two-way.
Can I share an experience?
Yeah.
Along those lines?
Please, that's why you're here.
We like to just hear ourselves talk. Please be
At
quiet.
this point, it wasn't in your contract.
Sorry. So in the midst of the depression and the darkness, I'd have little moments with Judah. And I don't remember when it was. I don't remember what was happening. But I was deep in sorrow. Like I was deep in it. And I was crying. And he just came up and like put his hands on my face. And he said, Mommy, it will be okay. And like hugged me and loved me. And like, I have felt guilt about that, but I have also felt like he was learning and showing empathy and compassion. And that's one of the things, you know, you pray over your kids. That's one of the things I pray over my kids is that they'll be compassionate. And like, he has that. So I definitely hear that, like raising each other and growing and learning from each other.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And you remembered it and received it and remembered it.
Yeah.
I know I've talked about this a few times, but again, with Sito, my grandmother's passing a couple of weeks ago, those times where they take my hands in their face really stand out to me also. And I don't know if that's because it's so intentional or if it's because I'm a physical touch person, but Willow is 4 and it's not funny, but it's funny. Like she had a really hard time understanding with the casket. She couldn't get her mind around why they made Sito so small. She kept saying Sito's so small. And we thought, well, yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's okay. And then finally, about an hour after we'd been there, she said, I wish they'd let her keep her legs because the bottom half of the casket is closed. Right. They thought, she thought they chopped her legs off.
Oh my goodness.
And from my sister-in-law, Megan, who just unfortunately lost her father-in-law, we realized that my niece Charlie thought the same thing about her grandpa.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was not until 3 months, this was 3 months ago, it wasn't until Charlie and Megan came to Sito's funeral. Charlie didn't want to come. And she mentioned it's because she didn't like that they didn't leave their legs on them.
Wow.
And Megan said, and I hope that's okay I say that, but she said, man, I'm so glad she articulated that she's been carrying that for 3 months.
Yeah.
But anyways, once we got past that and she kind of, you know, in her own way that I don't completely get, understood what was happening. And I was emotional and she took my face in her hands and she said, I'm sad too, but I'm not crying because she has a new body. Oh. Like once it clicked, it was like she was reminding me of the thing I've hoped for all along, that she would have a new body and not be suffering.
Yeah.
And whoa, that will stick for sure.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Sweet
Willow. A gift. Well, let's end with something that we always end with, and that is
the mom seat.
Maybe a little bit more fun than, I don't know. I like having these conversations, but it's a fun one.
It is fun.
Yeah.
Once again, just meant to show we all have some things in common. We're not alone. So, Shannon, the mom seat, we are going to read off 2 options.
I know. And I'm going to really, really try to just say one word.
Do you know your Enneagram number?
8.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hey, 8. If you want to say both, you can say both.
It's okay here. It's not that I want to say both necessarily, because I've listened to these and I've listened to how people answer, and I can answer with one word, but like I really want to control the narrative and explain like why I said what I said.
Okay.
I will try not to.
Okay. Here we go. Disposable or cloth?
Disposable.
Bottle or breast?
Breast.
Pinterest mom or Amazon Prime mom?
Amazon Prime.
Jeans or yoga pants?
Jeans.
Top knot or ponytail?
Top knot.
Home birth or hospital?
Hospital. I want the drugs.
Chore chart or managing chaos?
Managing chaos.
Gender reveal or find out when it pops out?
Gender reveal.
Instagram or Facebook?
Twitter.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Little birdie.
Homemade or store-bought?
Store-bought.
Lullabies or sound machine?
Lullabies.
5 servings of veggies per day or per month?
Per day.
Oh,
my boys
good
love
job.
veggies.
President of the PTA, or I'll send in some goldfish.
I'll send in some goldfish.
Bubble bath and a good book, or girls' night out?
Bubble bath and a good book.
Weekly meal plan or McDonald's drive-thru?
Weekly meal plan.
Homeschool or go to school?
Go to school.
In your home, are you Freebird or robed up?
I'm Freebird.
Yes!
So much. Oh my gosh. I know that will have to change because I have 2 boys.
Right. Maybe.
Maybe not.
Well, I want to traumatize them.
Birth control.
Yeah. Favorite parenting resource?
Mom friends.
Favorite place to buy kids' clothes?
like resale, like mom
Like
sale.
consignment shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, consignment shops, but also those places like mom sales where they have like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like in the big warehouses where they.
Oh, like indie kids sale?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Yeah, our friend does that.
Awesome.
Well, awesome. You have completed the mom seat. Good
Yay.
job.
Okay, wait, time out. Because you really went with it, the one word, like other than Twitter. What would, if you had a choice to flip the script, change the narrative on one of those, what would it be?
Explain to me what you mean.
Or if you wanted to explain your narrative, why you're picking that choice.
Yes.
Yeah,
Let
yeah.
me. Okay, I'm going to explain Twitter because I went off your choice.
Yes.
And the reason that I did that is because, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, Twitter has an amazing parenting support system. Parents Twitter, I know. And here's the thing I've noticed. You guys are on Twitter, but not really.
No, I don't do anything on there.
Like you have 14 followers. I have
Hello.
You mean
social
Momnesia
media shaming.
does?
No, I'm not shaming you. I'm not shaming you in any way. I'm just saying there is, and I want people to know this. This is why, like, I have listened to the podcast. I know that the choices were Instagram or Facebook. I don't really use those, but Twitter is this amazing support group. It's an amazing place to like be real, because like Instagram, like, there's all these perfect pictures. Facebook is sort of like the happy, like snippets of life. And on Twitter, the parenting world is like, oh my gosh, my kid just threw up all over the cat. You know, like it's really like real. And so like I'm not going to give this away my name, but I have a anonymous parent Twitter account that has almost 9,000 followers. And I am astounded at how supportive parent Twitter is. And that's why, like, I had to say that instead of Facebook
We're
or
going to
Instagram.
have to explore this.
Okay.
Yes, I think you should, because I think like it's a great resource for parents. It's a great resource for support, for like venting, for and I actually have met some very amazing friends. In fact, we went on a girls' trip, 4 of us, a month ago, and they've become
you met
real.
them on Twitter?
I met them on Twitter. We're from across the country, and we had a girls' trip, a weekend trip, and had an amazing time. And these are people that I never would have met otherwise.
Whoa.
That is amazing. I totally
surprised. I didn't know that.
Colin is only on Twitter, and I see it as like, I guess maybe because I see how he uses it. I see it only as a source for news, sports.
Yes, it
and
can
like
be
politics.
That's how, like, my personal account, I kind of have given up because I was getting so angry because it's all politics, and there's so much anger, so much fighting,
A lot of vitriol.
Yes, but what I've been astounded at is that there are different branches of Twitter. Like there's gaming Twitter, there's parent Twitter, and parent Twitter is an amazing place.
Okay.
Right, you're going to have to teach us your ways.
Yeah, wise one.
9,000
okay,
followers.
so I think I only have Twitter because, well, occasionally I'll do something music related and someone will be like, well, we need to tag you in the whatever. So I'm like, oh yeah, is that still a thing? I think I'm on there. And the more important one is I watch anything in the Bachelor franchise, Bachelorette, and all this stuff comes down in real time on Twitter. So I have to be on there to see, and to like the live tweeting during the shows. Oh, it's just so funny. The memes are funny. So
that's true.
I guess it's good for more.
I do watch debates, live tweet. I do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I watch The Bachelor. You watch debates. I get it.
You're so shallow. Why can't you be more sophisticated?
Sarah,
like
that
me?
is my secret vice as well. Like The Bachelor, it's ridiculous. My mom is like, "Why do you watch that crap?" And I know. And I'm like, because it's okay to turn off your brain sometimes.
Yes.
I also watch the debates.
Okay. All things to all people.
No.
But then the other thing I do is like usually after shows. So like Game of Thrones, I'm always on Twitter right after that.
Oh yeah. That never crossed my mind. Like right after the show when everyone's watching.
Yeah, everybody's like commenting on that.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite, the Ringer podcast network, they have live shows after those types of events. So that's the only time. It's usually like show related or debates that I get on.
And do you chime in at all with it, or do you just kind of see what other people are?
I just press lots of hearts. I don't
Okay.
create any content of my own.
I mean, I guess I don't ever really watch things in real time. I binge them 2 years late.
That's how I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I could go back and relive
You
it
could
with
still
people.
put in that hashtag.
Right.
See what people are saying.
Lesson learned. I can't wait to see what's out there.
Okay, so this has been so enlightening. I mean, your stories are great, but I also feel like I've learned so much about Twitter.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Right.
much for coming and sharing with us. And like I said earlier, giving that hope to other moms that are out there. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so nervous just because I don't even know why, but like you two are lovely, and I just love you both and follow you on your Facebooks, and you're inspiring and beautiful people, and I'm so glad to be.
Maybe
in
you
this
just don't
space with you.
know us well enough.
But thank you for saying all those
yeah.
nice things.
Yeah,
We
and
appreciate it.
you were great. I'll just say that. You know, like
No need to be
no need to be nervous. It was perfect because it was real. So thank you.
Well, we hope you will come back next week on the Momnesia podcast, where we're going to share more stories before Momnesia sets in and we forget it all. Have a great week.
Bye-bye. Today's episode of Momnesia was recorded at Grace Church in Noblesville, Indiana, with original music by Phil Larson. Make sure to check out Grace's podcast Between Sundays and Phil's music on Spotify.